Okay, everyone, good morning. Welcome. Nice to see you guys here. Welcome. Good morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. Today, we're going to be discussing what is Kamma and how does it affect me. This is the first topic after our meditation. Then I'm going to be sharing what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment. We'll take our lunch like we normally do. And then when we come back, I'll teach you guys about integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life. And we'll talk about the field trip and kind of preparing those kinds of things as well. So welcome to you guys. Pleased that you're here. If you'd like to join for meditation, you're welcome to do so. Remember, I'm going to start with the chanting to ease us into the meditation. I'll come in with some guidance, and then I'll have that period of time where it'll just be quiet, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. So if you'd like to chant along, you're more than welcome to, and then I'll come back in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rukavito Anutero Purisa Namasati Satatawap Manusanang Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังมหาคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาคะวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคะโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตตวามนุสนังโหโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, welcome to you guys. Welcome to everyone that's here. Welcome to everyone joining us online as well. Welcome. Today's topic is, what is Kamma and how does it affect me? This is a natural law that you're going to be learning about all throughout your journey with the path to enlightenment. When we talk about awakening to enlightenment and we talk about awakening to the wisdom of the natural laws of existence, this is the primary natural law that you're awakening to. So while we're going in and we're going to be talking about this natural law specifically, you could really say every single aspect of the teachings of the Buddha in one way or another are coming back to this natural law. It's helping you to be able to understand what is the cause and effect or action and result that's leading to any particular thing in your life. So you're going to need to be able to dive in and really understand this in detail. So I'm going to walk you through this. And just like always, if you guys have questions, you guys are welcome to ask questions here at the temple by using the microphones. And those of you guys online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comments section, or you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So first, let's just talk about some basics related to this natural law of Kamma. Some people refer to it as karma. This is the Sanskrit version of this word, but I use the word Kamma because that's the Pali version. And if you're studying the original words of the Buddha, they're in the Pali language, and people who study those will typically use the word Kamma rather than karma. It's referring to the same natural law, it's just a different language. It's the Sanskrit language is karma, and the Pali language is Kamma. This is a natural law that exists and is functioning at all times in every moment. Everything the Buddha taught in one way or another is coming back to this natural law of Kamma. This is what you're awakening to. When you're learning, when you're reflecting to independently verify in your practice, you're looking at this natural law and understanding it more and more so that you understand the causes and conditions that lead to any particular wholesome result and the causes and conditions that lead to unwholesome results. And in that way, you can make more and more decisions that are wise, that are leading to wholesome results. The way that you can think about this natural law is you can think of it as cause and effect, or action and results, the results of your decisions. If this word translated to just one English word, I would just use that word because it'd be much easier for everyone if I just used English. But because this word doesn't translate to just one English word, I still need to use this Pali word in order to help you guys understand it. So it's this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decisions. There's certain decisions that you make, and whenever you make those decisions, either wisely or unwisely, it's going to lead to either wholesome or unwholesome results. So it's going to lead to either wholesome Kamma or unwholesome Kamma. This natural law is affecting every being, whether they're aware of this natural law or not. It's just like gravity, that when we grew up, the natural law of gravity was affecting us whether we were aware of it or not. We didn't understand the natural law of gravity when we were 3 years old, 5 years old, 8 years old. We didn't understand it, but it still affected us. So this natural law is affecting you and has been affecting you all throughout your life. And without a wisdom of this natural law, you will struggle and you will have difficulties in the world. You're going to experience certain challenges in the world that when you're confronting those things, you don't have the wisdom that you need to overcome it. So therefore, you can think that you're making all the best decisions in the world, but it's leading to unwholesome results because the unenlightened mind, it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. And because of that lack of wisdom of this natural law, you'll keep experiencing the same unwholesome results over and over and over again. So awakening to this natural law, you'll be able to make wiser and wiser decisions that are leading to more and more wholesome outcomes. There's no being or entity that oversees the functioning of this natural law of Kamma. It just functions and it just happens based on the results of our intentions, our speech, and our actions, the way that we choose to interact in the world, and the choices that we make. It's going to produce some particular result. It's not a system of punishments and rewards. Sometimes people think of it that way. Depending on what you've been exposed to in the past, you might think of Kamma as punishments and rewards, but that's not what it is. You can almost think about it like a sequence of events, that there's this certain sequence of events that occurs. And it's not about fault or blame either. Sometimes people think of it that way. Or like this mystical, magical, dark cloud that's following you around. Or I've seen like some people talk about like you're depositing into your karmic bank account and you're withdrawing out of your karmic bank account. That's not what this is. It's just cause and effect, or action and result. There's no mystical or magical aspect of the natural law of Kamma, and it's not a dark cloud that's just following you around. It's literally just the results of your decisions. So for example, you guys probably took a shower this morning, so you smell good, right? That's the results of your decisions, right? You decided to work at some point and earn some money, so therefore you can afford to go out in the world wearing clothes because you've purchased some clothes, right? Or you might have chosen to eat some breakfast. This is the results of your decisions. Everything that you experience in one way or another, it's based on decisions that you're making. There's no being that's forcing you or controlling you or telling you what you should or shouldn't do. It's your own free will, your own choices that are leading to any particular result. But again, with the lack of wisdom of this natural law, you'll tend to make unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. So by awakening to this law more and more, you'll be able to make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. So this is a summary of what I was just essentially sharing, which is this cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions. It's your life, it's your decisions, and it's your results. And the more that you understand the natural law of Kamma, and you can embrace this understanding that whatever you experience is a result of your decisions, there's a lot of power in this. Because if everything was everybody else's fault of what was going on in your life, you would have no ability to change anything in your life. Or if there's some being or entity that's controlling you, then you can't do anything to improve your life. Or if it was destiny or fate or good luck or bad luck, which determines what it is that you're experiencing, you have no ability to improve anything in your life. But when you understand that those things aren't true, there isn't a destiny or fate. There isn't good luck or bad luck. There isn't any being that's controlling you or forcing you to experience any particular thing. The beauty about this is if you can get in touch with this and understand it, there's real power in it. Because if there's anything that you don't particularly care for that's going on in your life, all you need to do is cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. That's the power of the natural law of Kamma. That if there's something you don't care for that's going on in your life, just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. But if you don't have that wisdom and you kind of base what you're doing and you think it's good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate or some being is controlling you or it's somebody else that is causing the things that you're experiencing in your life, you're powerless. You have no ability to affect any kind of change in your life because you're basically resorting yourself to thinking that what I experience is because of other people. It's other people's decisions that I'm experiencing these things, or it's good luck or bad luck. You have no control over that. Or it's destiny or fate. You have no control over that. Or if there's some being that's controlling you, you have no control over that. You're just a robot. And if you resign yourself to that type of thinking, then you can't improve anything in your life. But if you understand the natural law of Kamma, and more you start cultivating wisdom, this is very empowering. Because again, if there's something in your life you don't care for, you just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and you will experience different results. So this anger and sadness and frustration, all these discontent feelings that are eliminated from the enlightened mind, if you don't like those feelings and you don't particularly care to feel guilty and shameful and fear and stress and anxiety, if you don't particularly care for that and you'd like to eradicate that from your life, it's just a matter of cultivating wisdom, making different decisions, and you will experience different results. That's the power of the natural law of Kamma. Okay, so this is kind of a summary of just what is the natural law of Kamma. Now, I'm going to share with you two aspects of the teachings of the Buddha related to the natural law of Kamma. This book series, out of this entire book series, one book is devoted to the natural law of Kamma. And these are just two particular aspects of the teachings of the Buddha related to the natural law of Kamma. But we could really say that entire book series is the natural law of Kamma. Even though there's just one book dedicated to it, every single aspect of that book series is teaching the natural law of Kamma in one way or another. But these are two important points to understand right now at the beginning where you're starting to understand the natural law of Kamma. I'll read them to you and then I'll explain and help you to understand what he's teaching. He says, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. What he's saying here is you create your own Kamma. Nobody else is creating it for you. Everything you experience in life is based on your decisions, right? So this is what he's sharing with you. But remember, you don't believe it. You learn it, you reflect on it, and you practice it. So this is what I'm teaching you. This is the learning part, that you make all the decisions and everything you experience is based on your decisions. Well, now you start reflecting on it. You ask yourself, why does your hair, or lack thereof, why is it like that? Did you decide that or someone else decided it? You decided it, right? What about the clothes that you're wearing today? Who decided that? Was it you or was it somebody else? It was you, right? What about where you live? This is a decision that you made. What about the job or occupation that you have? That was your decision. Every single aspect of what you experience in life is your decisions. You're the one making the decisions. Why are you sitting here listening to someone speak? Because you chose to come here. Or you're online and you're listening to me speak. This is your choice, right? So everything that you do in life, it's your choices. So you can independently verify this, that it's true, that no one else can create results for you. It's your decisions that are leading to any particular result. Then he says here, the result of Kamma, I say, is threefold: to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. So here's what he's saying is you can't run and hide from your karma. Whatever decisions you make, you're going to experience the results of those, right? You can't run and hide from it. You're going to either experience it in this life, the next life, or some future life beyond that, right? So when you start learning this and you start to understand this, then you're like, okay, well, if I'm the one who's creating either wholesome or unwholesome karma, and I can't run and hide from it, let me figure out how to extinguish all this unwholesome karma, all these unwholesome results. Because you're not going to walk down the beach and keep kicking up the sand and allowing the sand to blow back in your face. That's no fun, right? You wouldn't enjoy that. So as long as you're making unwise decisions, you're going to be out there experiencing unwholesome result coming back to you, and that's from decisions that you're making. But what the Buddha is teaching you is you can extinguish this. You can extinguish all the unwholesome results. All the unfortunate things that are occurring in your life, they're coming from decisions that you're making, so therefore you can extinguish those. So that's what I'm going to teach you guys now. Okay? So now there's 4 types of kamma that you need to understand. I'm going to explain to you what these are and give you examples so that you'll understand. Because your ultimate goal on the path to enlightenment, among other things, is to extinguish your unwholesome kamma so that you get to the point where you only have wholesome kamma coming back to you. And that's where your mind is very peaceful and joyful. That's where your life is very peaceful and joyful, because you only are experiencing wholesome things coming back to you. So there's something called wholesome kamma and unwholesome kamma. Then there's old kamma and new kamma. What wholesome kamma is any decisions that you make that are harmless. When you're making harmless decisions, you will experience wholesome kamma or wholesome results. So for example, right now you're just sitting here listening to me. You're not causing harm to anybody. This is harmless. That's why there's no harm coming to you. You're just sitting here experiencing the benefit of learning the teachings of the Buddha. Whereas if you were like poking the guy next to you or the girl next to you in the eye, and you were kicking them and you were spitting on them, now you're going to be producing unwholesome kamma because you're causing harm to the person next to you. But that's not the choice you're making. You're choosing to just sit here and listen. Right? But if you were poking the person in the eye, if you were kicking them and hitting them, if you were spitting on the person next to you, there's going to be unwholesome kamma that's coming back to you because now you're being harmful to the person next to you. Right? So you can't cause somebody else discontentedness. You can't cause someone else to be sad or angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But you can cause someone harm. When we talk about harm, what we're talking about is you're harming them physically, you're harming their material possessions, or you're harming their reputation. These are the types of harms that you can cause. So when you cause harm to others, it's going to produce unwholesome karma. Right? So what you would like to do is more and more make harmless decisions. And that's what the Buddha is teaching you to do in his Eightfold Path. He's teaching you how to produce decisions and make decisions that are harmless so that more and more you can create wholesome kamma. And now you can extinguish your harmful decisions that are leading to unwholesome kamma or unwholesome results. But with a lack of wisdom, you won't know what those harmful decisions are. Because we can have fully intentions, think that we're making all the best decisions in the world, but with the lack of wisdom of these natural laws, you will make harmful decisions without even realizing it because the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. If you've ever been in a conversation where you thought you had all the best intentions in the world and you talked with this person and the conversation just blew up on you and you're like, whoa, I don't even know what happened here. Like, what just happened? This is because the mind just lacks wisdom. There was something harmful that was going on there, and you can figure that out when you understand the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so there's this wholesome kamma and unwholesome kamma. Wholesome kamma is coming from harmless decisions, and unwholesome kamma is coming from harmful decisions. Then we've got old kamma and new kamma. What old kamma is any decisions that you made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now in the present moment. Then new kamma is any decisions you're making now in the present moment that you're going to experience the results of in the future. Okay, so let me give you an example of this. So some old kamma. Let's just say 3 years ago, you filled out a governmental form and you were reporting your income to the government. And now they're going to assess you taxes on that. And let's just say you lied on that tax form. And now when it comes back to you 3 years later, this old unwholesome karma is coming back to you, where the government sends you a letter and they say, hey, you didn't tell the truth on your taxes 3 years ago. You owe us $1,000 from the original amount. You owe us $1,000 interest, and you owe us $1,000 penalty. You now owe us $3,000. So this is old karma coming back to you. From decisions you made in the past, you're now experiencing old unwholesome karma. But now in the present moment, you have decisions to make. You need to make some decisions. And whatever decisions you make, it's going to produce new karma that you're going to need to deal with and that you're going to experience. Well, if you lack wisdom of these teachings, what you might decide to do is rip up the piece of paper and throw it away. Or you might decide to hide and try to lie and cheat and steal your way out of this thing, right? But that's going to produce new unwholesome karma. That would be really wise. But if you understand you can't run and hide from your karma, you're going to experience it regardless, then you know in the present moment, the last thing you're interested in doing is producing more unwholesome karma by lying or cheating or stealing or trying to hide from this. So in the present moment, you might decide to call up the government or write them a letter and say, hey, I really apologize. I take full responsibility for what transpired 3 years ago. And I would like to make amends, and I would like to take responsibility for this, and I'd like to pay it. But unfortunately, I don't have $3,000. I'm so sorry. Is there something we can do here? And maybe you're being so polite and so kind and so friendly. They say, you know what? We're going to drop off the penalty. We're going to drop off the interest rate. You only owe us $1,000. Right? And you're like, you know, I'd really like to pay that $1,000, but I really don't have it. I'm so sorry. Is there something we can do? And they say, well, we can work out a payment plan for you. Here, let's have you pay it over time. And now, because of your right intention, your right speech, your right action, you're able to work this out with the person on the other side. Instead of being bitter and harsh and hostile, you can handle this situation nicely. And now it produces wholesome karma for you. There's new wholesome karma. Right? And what you're doing is you're extinguishing this old unwholesome karma that's coming to you. It's like burying it in the sand so you can extinguish it. So in the past, you've made certain unwise decisions, and now you're experiencing the results of those. But you've also made certain wise decisions in the past too, that you're experiencing the results of those as well. More and more in the present moment, when you're making wise decisions, you're going to start experiencing more and more wholesome karma, to the point where you eventually will extinguish all your unwholesome karma, that is the old karma coming back to you. And this is just going to take time for you to gradually do this over time. Through learning and practicing and training your mind, you'll be able to gradually extinguish this old unwholesome karma that's coming back to you. If you could snap your fingers today and instantly practice all the teachings of the Buddha today, which you can't do, you're still going to experience unwholesome karma, because you've made unwise decisions in the past that are going to come back to you. And you've got to clean all that up, right? So you've got to clean these things up. And I'm going to give you some examples of these as we go in our class today. But before I do that, do you guys have any questions on any of the 4 types of karma? Wholesome karma, unwholesome karma, old karma, and new karma? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go forward. So next, this is the Buddha describing how you create unwholesome karma. This is the origin of all unwholesome karma. And it connects to something that I taught you yesterday, which was the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires. Here, the Buddha is explaining to you, anytime you're producing unwholesome karma, that's coming from your craving, anger, and ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. Those are the 3 unwholesome roots in the mind. So remember, those cravings are your selfish desires, the unquenchable thirst, the longing, the yearning, the pulling towards the objects of your affection. Whenever you're making decisions through that, it's going to produce unwholesome karma for you, because you're only interested in pleasing yourself, and it's self-satisfying. Right? You're just having a longing, yearning, and you're craving for something. Then whenever you're making decisions through anger, the bitterness, the hostility, the ill will, the frustration, the agitation, this is where you become unskillful in your intentions, your speech, and your actions, being bitter and harsh and hostile. This is going to produce unwholesome karma anytime you're making decisions through that. And then where all this is coming from is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the misperception, the misunderstanding. And whenever you're making decisions through that, it's going to produce unwholesome kamma. So any problems that you see in the world, any problematic situation, it's coming from it's coming from craving, anger, and ignorance, which is then producing unwholesome kamma. So whether it's on an individual level or it's a global conflict like war or something like that, it's all coming from a human being making a decision through craving, anger, and ignorance. Right? They're making decisions through this. So an individual is making decisions through craving, anger, ignorance, and it's producing unwholesome kamma or unwholesome results. Okay? Then, if you're interested in creating wholesome kamma, here's the Buddha explaining to you what produces wholesome kamma. And it's the wholesome roots. No surprise, right? We talked about this yesterday: generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. Whenever you're making decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, it's going to produce wholesome kamma. The generosity is the giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, effort, energy, and resources. When you're making those kinds of decisions, it's going to help you eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. It's only producing wholesome kamma. As you're practicing generosity, you're giving and sharing with others, it's going to produce wholesome kamma. Then there's loving kindness, this active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. Active goodwill, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. When you're making decisions through that, it's going to produce wholesome kamma. And then there's the wisdom. This is the wisdom of the natural laws of existence. When you're making decisions through the wisdom of the natural laws, it's only going to produce wholesome kamma for you. So more and more, what you would like to do is bring down your craving, anger, and ignorance, and bring up your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. That's what the path to enlightenment is doing for you. It's helping you extinguish the unwholesome roots, to uproot them and get them out of the mind. And then more and more, you're making decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. That's where all those different factors of the Eightfold Path are coming into play, whether it's the meditation or whether it's the moral conduct section, that wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline section. It's all working to bring down your pollutions of your mind, the unwholesome roots, and then you're bringing up the wholesome roots. And this is what's going to produce more and more wholesome kamma for you. Okay? So now I'll explain to you about extinguishing your kamma, because this is what you're looking to do on the path to enlightenment, is extinguish all your unwholesome kamma. And you do that through making all new decisions based in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. You're not going to be able to do that right away. You can't snap your fingers and instantly start making wise decisions 100%. But ultimately what you're doing is you're learning and practicing the Eightfold Path, right view all the way through right concentration. And as you're doing that and you're making decisions through the Eightfold Path, you're producing only wholesome kamma. And now more and more and more, you're producing wholesome kamma and making less and less decisions through the pollutions of craving, anger, and ignorance. And then now as your unwholesome kamma, your old unwholesome kamma is coming back to you, you're making new decisions that are now wise. Right? Because you're going to have old things coming back to you. The way you extinguish your old unwholesome kamma is start making more and more wise decisions based on the Eightfold Path. And now as you're making more and more wise decisions, you'll eventually extinguish all your unwholesome kamma. Let me give you some analogies and some examples of this. Okay, here's an analogy. That all throughout our life, we've been putting mud in our garden hose. We've been making unwise decisions in our relationships and all different aspects of our life. And as we're putting this mud in the garden hose, it's getting the garden hose impacted with mud and dirt. Now what you're choosing to do by getting on the path to enlightenment is you're hooking the hose up to the faucet. You're going to open up the faucet and start putting clean water into your garden hose. If you come to the temple once a month, if you meditate once a week, you've got like a drip going through this impacted garden hose. It's going to take you a really long time to ever clear that out, right? But if you open up that faucet wider and wider and you get more and more water going through the faucet, you're going to eventually start flushing out this mud out of the garden hose. And it's going to spit mud for a while, right? No matter how much water you put in there, it's going to spit mud for a while because we put mud in the garden hose. And it's going to spit that mud. But then over time, you're going to see little flash of clean water coming out. But then it's going to spit some more mud. and then it's going to have some clean water coming out, and then it's going to spit some more mud. But then eventually you keep flushing this hose with more and more clean water, and it's going to produce the clean water, the clean water, the clean water. Every once in a while you get a little bit of mud, but then clean water, clean water, clean water, mud, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water, clean water. Nothing but clean water is coming out, and now your mind is enlightened. You're experiencing nothing but wholesome results because you're only making wise decisions, right? So that's what you're looking to do, is as all these unwholesome things are coming back to you, instead of continuing to lie to the government, let's just clean this up. Let's clean this up. Let's figure out how to extinguish this and get rid of it. Lying and cheating and stealing isn't going to do that, because you know that from the 5 precepts. So let's make some wise decisions that's going to now extinguish this. Okay, so this is what you're going to need to be doing, and realizing right now that your mind is still having these pollutions. So you're still putting some mud into your garden hose to a certain degree. It's going to take you a few years to get to the point where all the mud is out of the garden hose. It's not going to be a 1 week thing, a 1 month thing, or a 1 year thing. Getting to enlightenment is a multiple year journey. This is how you can see that the Buddha didn't just sit under a tree, meditate, and instantly get to enlightenment. He had to clean up his mind, and then he had to clean up his life. Right? This is the way that you accomplish this. So let me give you some examples from my life. Okay, so when I grew up in a very hostile, very harsh environment with my family. There was lots of yelling, lots of argument, lots of hitting, lots of different things like this, right? So when I grew up, this is the way I was to a certain degree, right? And as I aged, I started realizing that this wasn't really wise, but I was still doing it because that's the way my mind was conditioned. It had certain pollutions in my mind. So when I met my current wife, I was of course nice and friendly and all these kinds of things, but at different times in our relationship, I would be bitter and I would be harsh and I would be hostile to her through my intentions, my speech, or my actions. And this was producing unwholesome kamma. This was putting mud into my garden hose, right? And then there was times where she would be that way with me too, right? Well, at some point in life, we were together for about 11 years at that point, and I decided, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to train my mind. I'm going to change what I'm doing here. So I started training my mind. And then I started to practice these teachings. Well, my wife still had bitterness and hostility in her mind. And she was being bitter and harsh and hostile with me. So even though I wasn't being bitter and harsh and hostile with her, she was still being that way with me. This was my unwholesome kamma coming back to me, because for 11 years, at different times, I was bitter and harsh and hostile to her. So even though I had cleaned up my mind and I was no longer doing that to her, she was still doing it to me. I had to clean that up. So when she was yelling and being bitter and harsh and hostile, sometimes I would just walk away, right? I would just walk away. Other times I would sit there and I would listen, and she would yell and holler and scream, and I would listen, and then I would say, "Thank you, dear. I love you," and I would walk away, right? And then sometimes she would yell and holler and scream, and I would say some more. What else do you got in there? I knew she had to extinguish it. She had to get it out. I was like, what else would you like to say? What else is still in there? Go ahead, give it to me. Come on, I know, give it to me, give it to me. She had to extinguish her fire of this anger, right? But slowly but surely, over about 1.5 year time frame, eventually she started to change. And she got to the point where she stopped yelling at me. I extinguished this unwholesome kamma. Because when she started being argumentative and hostile and bitter, I would just walk away. I would just listen. I would say, "Thank you, dear," and I'd walk away. I helped her to extinguish it. Where before, what I would do is when she would yell or holler and be upset, I would yell and holler and be upset right back, right? And it just keeps this fire burning. Her fire was burning and my fire was burning, right? And it's just a big inferno, right? But when I extinguished my fire, now I just had to help her extinguish her fire. And then once she extinguished that, hey, I haven't had a harsh word with her in years, right? So we've been together for 17 years, but we've been happily together for 6 years, right? It took us a good little while, maybe 5 years, that we've been happily together, right? So it's going to take you some time in these relationships to be able to first train your own mind and then get to a point where you've extinguished your unwholesome kamma. There are certain relationships in your life that you have right now that you might decide to let go of and move on. And that's the best way to clean that up. You have to look at your life and see, because there's certain hostility and bitterness that you have or the other person has, and you're not committed to that relationship, and it's better to just let it go and move on. And then there's certain relationships that you have that you're more committed to, that you're having difficulties and troubles in, but you're committed to working on your mind, and then you're committed to working on the relationship, and you're looking to clean that up. And then there's a third category of relationships, are brand new people you've never even met before, that once you meet them from this point forward, you'll only ever be loving and kind to those people. And now you'll have a great relationship with that individual. Because not only did I need to clean up the relationship with my wife, but I needed to clean it up with my son too. One of the things that I was noticing is at age 6, he was already starting to talk aggressive and bitter and harsh to his mom. He had learned that stuff from me because he saw me doing it. So he was following me. So not only did I have to clean it up with my wife, but I needed to teach my son that what he was doing was unwise, and that what dad had done in the past was unwise. And we needed to clean all this up, right? So this is part of the things that you're going to need to do in order to clean up your life. You're going to need to let go of certain relationships and move on. You're going to need to be cleaning up your own mind and committed to cleaning up these relationships. Some of these relationships you're going to have to press pause on, step away from, train your own mind, and then come back into the relationship with a better mind. And then there's a third category of brand new people. You don't even know their names yet. You don't even know who they are. I haven't even met them yet. And when you meet those people, you will have already trained your mind. You'll only be loving and kind and warm and gentle, because that's all you guys have ever seen of me. You probably can't imagine me being bitter and harsh and hostile, because you've never even seen the slightest inclination of that. But that's the way I was in the past, because I had these same poisons, these same pollutions as you do. So you're going to need to clean up your life this way by practicing the Eightfold Path. You clean up your mind, and then you clean up your life and the relationships around you. And then you build this ideal life for yourself that you can't imagine changing anything about your life. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will be living the ideal life. Whether it's where you live, the types of friends that you have, whether you have a life partner or not, what location you live in, what job or occupation you have, the things you do on a daily basis, you'll just thoroughly enjoy every single aspect of your life. And you're probably not there at this point, and that's okay. You're a work in progress, and everybody's in their own journey. But ultimately, that's what you're doing, is you're building this ideal life for yourself. But you got to train your own mind. You can't live in this bubble, right? You can't create a bubble where everybody in your life is doing the things you want them to do. Instead, you got to train your own mind to get rid of your craving, your anger, and your ignorance. And then more and more, you develop through wise decision-making this ideal life and cleaning up all the unwise decisions that you've made in the past. So any questions on extinguishing and eliminating your unwholesome karma? Jack's got a question. I'll just remind you guys online that you guys can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like.
Okay. How do you distinguish between old karma and new karma? Say somebody starts from today, say, I'm going to do really good karma, make good decisions, but you might not see the results of that for quite a time. All you're experiencing then is the old karma coming back, and all you experience is well, this is not working because I'm now doing all this good karma and all I'm getting is bad karma back. So how do you distinguish between the two?
It's not possible for you to make wise decisions and get unwholesome karma. That's not possible. What you're experiencing is the results of unwise decisions. So the way you distinguish between old and new karma is any decisions you've made in the past that you're experiencing the results of now, today. That's the old karma from the past. But now, in the present moment, you're making new decisions. And now that's going to produce new karma for you to experience in the future. So that example of the taxes, right? That was old karma coming back to me. But now in the present moment, you're making decisions to extinguish this, and that's producing new wholesome karma. Same thing with my wife. When she was yelling and hollering and screaming with me, that was my old unwholesome karma. But then in the present moment, I was making wise decisions. I was no longer yelling and being upset with her. And I was just calm. And then that was producing new wholesome karma. But in the past, as this old karma was coming back to me, my wife was yelling at me, I would yell right back. So I was creating new unwholesome karma, and I just was stuck in this constant cycle of experiencing unwholesome karma over and over. So it's anything that's coming back from your past is old karma, and it can be wholesome karma too. The old karma can be wholesome karma as well. I just got a check from the U.S. government from money that they owed me for the last 9 years, 10 years. They haven't given it to me yet. They just sent me a check for a little bit of money. And this is old, wholesome karma because I paid my taxes, actually overpaid my taxes, and now they finally sent me a check. This is old, wholesome karma coming back to me, right? So you can have old, wholesome karma or old, unwholesome karma. And you need to be able to look at what you're experiencing so that you can discern what are the decisions that I made that led to this. That's the power in the natural law of Kamma, that if we blame other people for what we're experiencing, we never cultivate the wisdom, because the natural law of Kamma is the best, most unbiased teacher you'll ever find. It's going to show you every single moment if you're making wise decisions or you're making unwise decisions. So whenever you're experiencing something, you look at it and you say, okay, I just got some wholesome Kamma here. What decisions did I make that led to this? And now you look to make those similar decisions. And then when you're getting unwholesome karma, you're like, okay, what are the decisions I made that led to this? Because I would like to cultivate wisdom to stop making those kinds of decisions. And where you need help, that's where you reach out to your teacher, because sometimes students can't see the decisions that they made that led to that particular thing. Or maybe they're just trying to confirm that they understand what it is that they think they understand. So you would like to look at each incident of every single situation that you're experiencing to see what were the wise decisions you made and what were the unwise decisions that you made. And oftentimes when you're experiencing a certain result, it's kind of got a little bit of a mixture of both. If you've made, say, 80% of a decision that was wise and 20% of it was unwise, you're going to get that kind of Kamma coming back to you, where you get a bit of wholesomeness, but there's this little bit of unwholesomeness that's going to come along with it as well. So you have to look at that and be able to discern that really closely, because whenever you're experiencing anything unwholesome, it's going to come from craving, anger, and ignorance. And you would like to cultivate wisdom so that you can extinguish the cravings, you can extinguish the anger, you can extinguish the ignorance, and now arise the generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And that's what will flush this out so that you no longer make those unwise decisions.
Great.
Okay. You have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to understand how do we distinguish craving to what we want and what we pursue in life. Mm-hmm. For example, like I want a better job, because I want to make more money, because I want to make my life better. Is this craving, or is this something that I pursue in life and that is positive?
You need to look within your own mind to be able to discern whether it's a craving, desire, attachment or not. Because it's not the object itself. It's the way the mind is longing, yearning, and pulling towards that thing. This is something I taught on Tuesday from this course. So when you're doing your breathing mindfulness meditation and you're cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind, this is what's going to help you in day-to-day life to discern, is it a craving or is it not? If there's discontentedness, it's a craving for sure. So if you get that job and you're so happy, or if you don't get that job and you're sad, it was a craving, desire, attachment that you were pursuing that job with, a craving, desire, attachment. But that doesn't mean that it's unwise to pursue a new job and experience increased income. You just need to learn how to work towards this particular job with a goal, objective, or interest, and not chase it with want and expectations and longing, yearning. So it's not the object itself. Let me give you this example. Let's say you were interested in going hiking and you had a liter of water in your car. And now you're driving to the hiking trail. You get out, you walk on the trail, you're 30 minutes down the trail, and you're like, oh my goodness, my water, I forgot my water. I got to go get my water. I'm going to be out here for 8 hours. I don't want to die. And you go back to your car really quick and you hurry down the trail. You might twist your ankle, sling open the door, and you grab the water. Water. In this situation, you're attached, you're craving, you're longing, you're yearning. But you could also be out on that trail and be like, I forgot my water. You know what? I'm going to be out here for a while. I need to go back and get it. So let me make my way back to the car and get my water. And now you calmly make your way back to the car and you get the water. So the craving, desire, attachment's not the object, because in this example, the object's the same, the water. In the situation's the same. You're out on the trail hiking. The difference is the first person had this longing, yearning. They were having this craving, desire, attachment, and they were forming their inner feelings based on whether they had this water or not. Right? That's the craving, desire, attachment, is the longing and yearning for it. It's not the water itself. So in relationship to a job, you're going to need to learn how to pursue improvement in your life through goals, objectives, and interest. A true goal is one that if you obtain it, you're fine. And if you don't attain it, you're also fine with that too. But oftentimes people set goals for themselves and it's polluted with craving, desire, attachment. That if they get this goal, they'll be happy, and if they don't get it, they'll be sad. That's not a true goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment. So you would like to learn how to work towards something as a goal, objective, or interest. And if you obtain it, wonderful. And if you don't, that's fine too. You either need to change your timeline, you need to change the resources that you're putting towards this goal, or maybe you're just fine with 80% of the goal. And you know what? You're like, hey, 80% of this goal is fine. I'm completely okay with that. I don't need to go any further. And you can maintain your contentedness and your joy. So you're going to need to learn how to train your mind to bring down your cravings, desires, attachments through the Eightfold Path. And then more and more in daily life, restrain your mind and train it to not pursue things as craving, desire, attachments. So I'll give you an example. One time I was in a store and I used to have this thing for shoes. I used to buy lots of shoes. My mom had this too, and I kind of picked it up from her. I really always enjoyed having lots of shoes. I would even line my shoes up and I would look at them and I would check them out. I would really liked all my shoes being in a certain place, right? And whenever I go to the mall, I'm always checking out new shoes, right? Well, once I started training my mind in these teachings, I went to the store one time and I was standing in a shoe store and I was looking at all the shoes and I just was standing there looking. I was like, do I need this pair of shoes or do I want this pair of shoes? Because if you want it, that's the longing, the yearning, right? And your mind's trying to form these pleasant feelings based on acquiring this thing. So I stood there and I had a conversation with myself and I had to look inward. This is the introspection. This is the mindfulness. You have to look inward. And I was like, you know what? I've got like 6, 8, 10 pairs of shoes at home. I don't need this pair of shoes. The mind just wants it. So I just walked out of the store. I said, thank you to the person, and I walked out, right? I think I might have even had tried them on, and I decided in my mind, like, no, I don't need them. I want them, but I don't need them. Because it's very expensive to follow your wants. This is where you'll end up in debt if you just chase after your wants. But when you are looking to fulfill your needs, you'll see that you can actually live in this world very inexpensively. And it's quite liberating to be able to do that, because then you have money to do other things that you might be interested in. So you're going to need to ask yourself, you're going to need to look inward. I can't tell you with 100% certainty whether one particular thing is a craving for you or not, unless I see discontentedness. If I see discontentedness, I can know like, she's having a craving because you're discontent. But that's where you need to use your mindfulness and look inward and discern for yourself. Is this a craving, desire, attachment? Is the mind longing, yearning for it? Or is it a need? Here's another way that you can do this. When I was going to get a new phone, I knew that I needed a new phone because I was on like an iPhone 6 and it was really, really slow. Like I would sit there and try to pay for things in Thailand and it would take a long time. That was keep crashing and crashing. And I was like, I need to get a new phone. So what I would do is I would go to the store and I would look at the new phones and I would check them out. I would ask some questions. I would look at the price and then I would leave. If you do that and you leave and your mind's frustrated or agitated or annoyed, it's a craving. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't buy the phone. It just means you need to eliminate your craving, right? So I did this like 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I would go look at the phones, check them out, and I would walk away. I would go look at the phones, check them out, and I would walk away. I would do this over multiple weeks before I actually ended up purchasing the phone. And then ultimately, I ended up deciding to purchase the phone, right? So it's not the object itself. It's how the mind's relating to this object. And you need to be able to observe that with your mindfulness in order to get to the point where you're confident that what you're doing is not based in craving, desire, attachment. Because if you base it in craving, desire, attachment, it's going to produce unwholesome results for you. And that's not what you're interested in. You'd like to take your time, because with craving, desire, attachment in the mind, you're going to want to hurry up and make a bunch of decisions. You're going to hurry up, go to the store, look at the phone, purchase the phone, go home, play with it. Wow, look at my great phone. Oh, I got all these pleasant feelings. This is so great. But then when your phone's not around or it breaks, you're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to be angry. So if you take your time and slow down, you can actually ensure that whatever decision you're making is not based in craving. So that way you don't get those conditioned pleasant feelings, but you don't get the painful ones either. But instead, what you get is a well thought out decision where you can gradually work towards your goal and objective. And now it's only producing wholesome results. Because when you're making real quick, rapid decisions, you'll make unwise decisions and it'll produce unwholesome results. And now you got to go back and clean all that stuff up. It actually takes you more time because you're chasing after those pleasant feelings. But if you take your time and you gradually work towards a goal, you can be confident that this is a wise decision. And now when you implement that, it'll produce only wholesome results. And now you can just keep going forward in your life. So for me, this is one of the reasons why people are like, wow, you're doing so much. You've got a YouTube channel, you've got a Facebook group, you've got a podcast, you teach all these classes, you travel around to different places to teach, you have all these students that you spend time with, and spend personal time one-on-one, you have a family that you spend time with them, you have time for yourself. Like, how do you do all this? It's like, well, I never have to clean anything up. I'm only making wise decisions, slowly but surely, and there's never any calamity. There's never any unwholesome results for me to deal with because it's only wise decisions that I'm performing, and I'm not sitting around being angry or frustrated or agitated or lonely or bored. You're just making your decisions to go forward in life. So you'd like to slow your decision-making process down. Whenever you see your mind jumping and running and making a bunch of rapid decisions, that's when it's chasing those pleasant feelings, and you'd like to restrain the mind, almost like riding a horse, that you grab those reins and you pull it back and you restrain the mind from doing that. So when I went into that store looking at the shoes and I saw my mind was pulling towards them, I had to restrain it and pull it back and say, no, I'm not going to let you do that. So this is how you do it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I know that was a long answer, but it was important because it was part of the teaching for all of you guys.
Yeah. No, I think it's very inspiring. Just on top of that, I have another question on, so what if like I do things with goodwill, I try to help people, but then certain people might not receive it like the way I want to be, and they might consider something like unfair because that's like something that happened to me recently. Yeah, so I do feel bad about that. We do things with good willing, but then the outcome might not be as what I expected.
So the problem there is the expectations. That's the problem. That if you have a certain expectation that the outcome is going to be a certain way, it can't permanently meet your expectations. That's the universal truth of impermanence. So you need to do things without any expectation. That you just, if you're going to practice generosity and do something kind and loving, you do it without any expectation of anything in return. That's what will protect your mind. Whenever you have expectations based on something you're doing, it's not going to meet those expectations permanently. It's not possible. That's the craving, desire, attachment. The wants, the expectations, wanting things to be a certain way, and it can't be that way permanently. So you need to be able to do things without any expectation of anything in return.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, not seeing any questions online. So let me go to the next piece of this, which is helping you understand laws of society. Sometimes when people hear me talking about the natural law of Kamma, and I tell them that you can't run and hide from your Kamma, they'll say, hey, David, hold on a second. What about that person who was all over the news, that their bloody footprint was found at the murder scene, the bloody a murder weapon was under their bed, there was blood all over their car, they went to court and they were found not guilty. Didn't they run and hide from their karma? And the answer is no, they sure haven't. You can't run and hide from your karma. But sometimes what people look at is they just look at the court system and whether they went to jail or not as their karma. But there's much more involved than just that. The first thing to understand with the laws of society is that they are imperfect, because human beings have created these laws and human beings are administering them, and human beings have craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind. So when they're making decisions, they're making unwise decisions. So while we should continue to aspire to create more and more fair and equitable laws and apply them equally, the truth of the matter is that as long as there's unenlightened beings in the world doing those things, they're not going to be 100% fair and they're not going to be equitable. So going to jail isn't 100% of your karma. There's other things that individual is experiencing above and beyond jail. And here's an example of that, some things, right? The consequences they're experiencing are not just based on the laws from society, which would put you in jail or punishment or things like that, but an individual who's on the news and who's well known in the community of having murdered this person. The bloody footprint is at the murder scene. The bloody weapon is under their bed. They have blood all over their car. They're still experiencing unwholesome karma, but you just might not be there to see it. They have a bad reputation now in the community. They have a very bad reputation among the community. There's sickness, disease, physical and mental pain, and shortened lifespan that they can experience, because in order to kill a human being, there needs to be a certain amount of anger in the mind, a certain amount of ill will in the mind to be able to go out and kill another being. And that anger and hatred, it wears on your body and it puts stress on the organs. And now your lifespan is going to be shorter because of that. Because even though you went to court and you were found not guilty, that anger didn't just disappear. It's still there. Right? So it's going to affect the health of this body. Then they're going to be experiencing hostility and aggression and fights within their relationships, and they can even be killed themselves because, again, that anger that led to them killing that person, it didn't just disappear. They still have anger and hatred and bitterness and hostility in other parts of their life. And now they're putting that out, and that's coming back to them more and more. So they're experiencing those kinds of things, and they can actually get killed themselves. They can also experience a loss of income and wealth, because to go to court and defend yourself, you're going to need to hire lawyers and stuff like this. Also in the community, fewer and fewer people are interested in hiring you to do any particular job. So you're going to experience this loss of income and wealth. They're going to have difficulties in relationships. Whatever relationships they're in, whether it's coworkers or friends or family, you're going to have all kinds of difficulties because they're making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. They're going to experience problems with securing and progressing in their employment because people aren't going to be interested in hiring them and promoting them based on these activities that they're have been involved in. They can have difficulty securing housing or acquiring the basic necessities to sustain their life, right? This is all unwholesome karma as a result of what they did. And then ultimately, they're experiencing discontentedness and potentially will experience rebirth if they don't get to enlightenment, right? The discontentedness might be fear or guilt or shame or other things like this. This is all their unwholesome karma based on their decisions. And then if they don't purify their mind, they'll experience rebirth as well, and rebirth into the various realms, the hell, animal, afflicted spirit, or someone who murders most likely isn't going to be reborn back into the human realm or the heavenly realm unless they clean up their mind. There was a person during the lifetime of the Buddha who killed 999 people, and he actually ended up studying with the Buddha, completely transforming his mind, and he got to enlightenment in that lifetime, right? It's possible for that to occur. So that's why when people share with me, they're like, oh, I don't know if I can get to enlightenment. I have so much unwholesome karma. It's like, well, I don't think you've killed 999 people. So if that person can get to enlightenment, you surely can. So put your effort and dedication and energy into it, right? This is actually an interesting story of itself about this murderer. If you guys are ever interested, I'll share it with you. But this is the unwholesome karma. It's not just going to court. It's not just going to jail. So when you watch the news and that person you thought for sure was guilty and they were found not guilty, no need to get upset. No need to get panicky or worried or stressed or angry. That person's experiencing their karma for sure. You can't run and hide from it. But then also, if someone you thought was not guilty is found guilty, this is their karma. This is the results of decisions that they made. There's no need for you to be upset or angry or frustrated or think that there's injustices in the world. Everything is transpiring based on the natural law of Kamma. You might not understand it 100% when you're looking at someone else's life, but within your life, you know the decisions that you're making, and you can look and see what's leading to any particular wholesome or unwholesome result. Sometimes people say, why do bad things happen to good people? Well, you don't necessarily know that that person's good because you're not with them 100% of the time. You don't know all the decisions that they're making in this life, and you don't know all the decisions that they've made in previous lives either. So now, whatever they're experiencing, you can be assured it's their karma. That just because you think that person is quote unquote good and they're experiencing something quote unquote bad, you're not with them all the time and you don't see all the decisions that they're making and all the things that they're experiencing. So this is everything that I have to share on this topic, unless you guys have questions. Looks like Gary has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hello. Yep. So with, I'm listening with a lot of interest on the karma topic, but I just keep thinking about, young children dying of cancer, or natural disasters. I was in Thailand when the tsunami hit, and I remember the impact it had on the country, and all these innocent people on the beach, going about their day, and then bang, they're gone. So I don't know whether they all had, it coming to them, or bad karma, or whatever. I don't know how you're going to frame it, or they all did something bad in their past life, or whatever, or it's just bad luck. I don't know what you're gonna say.
Okay, so there's no such thing as bad luck. Anything that's happening is a result of our decisions. So if I'm choosing to live on a coastline, then one of the risks is that there could be a tsunami. That's the cause and effect. It was my choice to live on this coastline, and now because of that, there's this potential for a tsunami. And that's why I don't live on the coastline. I wouldn't live there because environmentally, our planet needs that coastline in order to have a healthy planet. But what we keep choosing to do is live in these places. If you look in places where there's regular hurricanes or typhoons or tsunamis and things like this is all places where the world is telling us, we're not interested in you living there. The earth is telling us, even though it's not a living being, the earth's cycles are telling us, we're not interested in you living there. We need this space in order for us to have these tsunamis and tornadoes and all these other things. I wouldn't ever live in those kinds of places because of that. These are natural events that occur. Our planet is a dynamic place. It's impermanent. And our planet is communicating with us and showing us where we should live. And it shouldn't be on these coastlines. But because of the craving, the people, really like that beautiful view, and they're holding on to that, and now they want to live on the coastline, so now they're going to experience that unwholesome result, when in reality, you can make different decisions. One of the ones that people oftentimes struggle with is thinking about children, because they're like, hold on a second, this kid is 3 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. What happened and what transpired for this child to be experiencing this cancer at such an early age? Well, this is old Kamma from our previous life, because there isn't anything that transpired in that life for that individual to be able to experience that. Our body is a result of old Kamma. So when we die in our previous life, which realm we're born into and the condition of the body in that particular realm, or the condition of that existence in that particular realm, is based on the decisions we've made in our prior life. So if an individual is reborn into this life, and let's just say they get cancer and die at age 3, this cancer is based in the body, and this body is old Kamma from their previous life. And now this being who has died at the age of 3, there's the potential that they could have gotten to enlightenment at death. You don't necessarily know that or not. So sometimes we look at death as being unwholesome. the fact is that we're all going to die, every single one of us. And if that 3-year-old child lived for 3 years and it died and it got to enlightenment and it's never going to be reborn anywhere at all, you would say, oh, wonderful, that's great. But you don't know that in that situation. So oftentimes people look at a child dying at the age of 3 and their perception is that something bad has happened here. And that's not necessarily always the case. But whatever they're experiencing, it's Kamma from the previous life. Now, as we age, more and more, the Kamma that we're experiencing is from this life and decisions that we're making in this life. But there's still certain things that can come back to us from our previous lives, but that's all coming from the cravings within our own mind. So I'll give you an example of this. Let's just say in the past, there was a being named Bob, and Bob was very sexually active and had lots of sex with lots of different people and having lots and lots and lots and lots of sex. And then he died, say, at the age of, 70, right? And now this being was reborn into a new life. And let's just say this new life is now Barbara. And now Barbara has the cravings from Bob, because that's what moves from one life to the next. It's a completely new mind, but your cravings and residual memories move from one life to the next. So now Barbara, having this high sexual craving in her mind, she's having lots and lots of sex. Maybe she's had 2, 3, 4 different husbands. Maybe she's even cheating on some of those husbands, going outside the relationship. And now let's say by the age of 30 or 40, she contracts HIV and she dies at the age of 50. Okay, this is Kamma from her previous life, but it's based in cravings from Bob that Bob never extinguished. But then also Barbara, having acted upon those same cravings, she was making certain decisions throughout that life that led to her death. And now her death at age 50 was a result of her cravings, anger, and ignorance, of course, and it led to her death and unwise decisions. And this is also Kamma from her previous lives as too, because Bob never extinguished that. So that's why it's so important in your current life to look at your cravings. And it doesn't really matter whether it was from a previous life or this life, but look at your cravings that you have in your mind and extinguish them, because they're all going to lead to unwholesome results when you understand the teachings of the Buddha.
One more. So you basically said that it comes from a previous life, old karma. But I mean, how do I know I had a previous life? I mean, is it just a matter of believing? Is that what it comes down to?
No, there's no belief in it whatsoever. So any karma that you're experiencing right now are decisions that you're making in this life, right? But the cravings are oftentimes from your previous life, that you have certain cravings. You haven't been able to confirm the cycle of rebirth right now, and that's normal because you just got on the path, at least with me, 4 days ago, right? So normally students approach the cycle of rebirth maybe a year and a half, 2 years into their development on the path, and you can independently verify it. In volume 11, chapter 105, I give you the 17 different ways that you can independently verify the cycle of rebirth, that it's true and that it's real. But that's not something that someone typically needs to do really early up front like this on their journey to enlightenment, because there's a lot of foundational teachings that you need to learn first, like the 3 universal truths, 4 noble truths, 8-fold path, 5 precepts, meditation training, and all these other things, right? So that's what I suggest you focus on. But just understand that I can assure you that you've had plenty of previous lives. You not memorizing them or not remembering them right now, that's the only thing, is you just don't remember them, because actually you're just believing that you only have one life. You actually don't have any evidence that there is only one life, but it's just something that the mind believes. But as you progress and you're getting more and more of the pollution out of your mind, you might actually observe your past lives and see them, and there's other ways to confirm it too. So I suggest you just focus on the core central teachings, but just know that you've definitely had previous lives, and the cravings that you have in your mind, it's a combination of things from your previous lives in this life too. But you don't necessarily need to know that in order to extinguish your cravings in this life, because whatever cravings you've got, that's what you've got, and you've got to eliminate those and eradicate those. So it doesn't really matter if it's from a previous life or not. Just work on extinguishing any kind of craving that you see coming up in your mind.
Thank you. So I've been to a certain developing country, which is not Theravada Buddhist, but they believe in rebirth too. And in one of the cities, it was very impactful to see homeless, dirty children, probably orphans, begging for food everywhere or for money. And every Western person who I talked to, we had the same mindset. We were like, wow, this is like a national emergency, like everything should stop and like save those kids, they're in danger. But the locals seemed to be totally indifferent, like if it was like a stray dog, because they were like, obviously it's a developing country and obviously they were used to saying that, but still they were indifferent. And I figured out that it's probably because they believe in rebirth. And they probably just think that it's those kids' karma. So it looks like the dark side of...
Yeah, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but I wouldn't agree that it's because of a belief in rebirth. Here in Thailand, I don't know I can't talk about other people. I can only talk about me. I don't believe in rebirth. I know with 100% certainty that it's true because of my experiences in confirming the cycle of rebirth. But if someone understands the cycle of rebirth, that's not what's leading to problematic situations in the community. What's leading to problematic situations in the community is that people are making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. That's what's producing those unwholesome results. And they're not practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. That's what's leading to that. That's the cause of anything unwholesome and anything wholesome. So it's not an understanding of the cycle of rebirth that someone would just ignore this issue. It's individual beings making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. It's going to produce unwholesome results. And if people are going to improve and experience something different, they need to make decisions through generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So in an environment where people are practicing those things, you can see different results. So it's important to be able to trace the cause and not think about something like a belief in the cycle of rebirth. That's not what's going to lead to any particular unwholesome results. Back here, I'm not sure, because I know you were online. I'm not sure if you saw this when you were online, but this is the cause of all unwholesome results. It's craving, anger, and ignorance. So we could look at that situation with the children experiencing the results that they're experiencing, and we could trace it back to craving, anger, and ignorance. And in situations where you don't have that going on, we can see that there's generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So like here in Thailand, they understand the cycle of rebirth, but you don't see the same things that you just talked about. And that's because they're practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So if the cause was that people believed in rebirth, then anywhere that you saw the belief in rebirth, you would see the same effect. That would be the truth of the natural law of Kamma, and you'd be able to see that very clearly. But because that's not the cause, that means in every single place where there is the understanding of the cycle of rebirth, you don't see childhood poverty and things like that, because that's not the cause of childhood poverty. Instead, it's craving, anger, and ignorance. That's what's causing it. And then what's going to remedy it is generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom.
Okay, so while it's true, now I understand that it's true that those children were in that condition because of their karma. Mm-hmm. We need to remedy that with generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom.
Yeah, and that's where individuals who are practicing these teachings and training their mind, we can influence and impact an environment like that, and we can potentially help if that's what we choose to do. But if we're going to help, we need to understand that it's not just giving them food and water and clothing and shelter and medical care. Yes, that's going to help them sustain their life for the next however long, but that's not ultimately going to fix the problem, because the problem is within those individuals' mind. They have craving, anger, and ignorance. There's some unwise decisions that are being made, and they need generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom to be able to fully resolve that issue. Whereas if we just gave food, clothing, water, shelter, and medical care, now this person is dependent on us and they don't know how to acquire those things for themselves. They're attached to us. And this isn't actually solving the problem 100%. So there needs to be some amount of that in order to help them sustain their life. But then there needs to be the sharing of wisdom to be able to help them learn how to eradicate their craving, anger, and ignorance, which is the whole cause of these problems. And so that they can increase their generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom by practicing the Eightfold Path. So that's why, like when you guys went to the orphanage the other day during that retreat, I sent some books to the orphanage. I don't know if you guys know that. I didn't go to the orphanage because I couldn't go this time where I've gone in the past, but I sent some books of the Buddha's teachings because that's what's going to help those people. Yeah, we sent them water and clothing and or whatever you guys ended up purchasing, food and stuff like that. But we need to give them wisdom too. We need to give them the opportunity to cultivate wisdom, and that's what's ultimately going to help them the most.
That's kind of related to my next question, which is, it seems like people who lack wisdom, like live very automatically. They're on the mercy of karma without understanding it.
Yeah, that's where you're stuck in this continuous cycle of experiencing the same thing over and over. As long as there's ignorance, there's going to be birth, aging, sickness, and death, and discontentedness. Remember the dependent origination, right? As long as there's that ignorance, this whole cycle is just going to keep going. That's that you just don't know what you don't know. And you stay stuck in that continuous cycle until you start cultivating some wisdom. So that's why whenever there's a problematic situation, if you can insert some wisdom, that's what's going to fix it. So that's what I do. Like you've been around me and my son. Like if my son's doing something unwise, I try to insert some wisdom so that that thing can get improved. But it's ultimately each individual person's decision of whether they're going to cultivate that wisdom or not. And that's why you, me, we can't change the world. Each individual person has to choose to change for themselves by cultivating wisdom. And that's what's going to ultimately impact the world and influence the world.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. And the last question, and I hope it's my last question about karma in general. I still can't understand, like, how can a person from that story about Buddha and the guy who killed 999 people, how can a mass murderer get to enlightenment in one life? And then there is another person who gets potentially killed somewhere just because they had unwholesome friends. So I still can't grasp this logical connection.
Yeah, you've been trying to look for where's the fairness and where's the equality, right? And that's not the way that the natural law of Kamma functions. It is functioning fairly and equally, but you just don't understand everything that this person did and everything the decisions that they made versus this person over here. The person getting to enlightenment who killed 999 people, they were studying with the Buddha. The teachings are going to be very deep, very profound, very penetrating. So Buddha is going to be able to help that person in significant ways where if you weren't studying with the Buddha, you could still get to enlightenment. But a murder of 999 people, they have a significant amount of craving, anger, and ignorance, and they would need to have a drastic transformation. And a Buddha is able to help and bring about that kind of change for an individual because their teachings are so penetrating and such deep wisdom that they have.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I'm not seeing any questions anywhere else. So what I'm going to do is just end here. By thanking all of you guys for your questions. And at the same time, let you guys know we're going to take a break. And then we're going to come back and talk about what is merit and continued support on the path to enlightenment. So take a 15-minute break and let's get back together at 11 a.m. and we'll pick it up there. So thank you guys for your questions and we'll see you guys in a bit. Okay? All right.